Do you know what? We could, but we won't, avoid talking about the Stonehenge Tunnel. Because it invokes so many emotions, and you and we are unashamedly in favour, and whilst we understand why anybody might not be, we do understand, but I thought it would be a good idea to actually talk about some of those aspects of why you're in favour, and also the fact, one of the things that is so for us anyway so key here is that there is this obsession with what's inside the heritage boundaries. Nobody worries about whatever work might be going on around and about, but you only have to go a little bit to the west, for example, outside of the heritage boundaries, and good grief, there's a whole mountain of stuff there. So yes, there you go. That's one to talk about.
Yeah, it's a great topic to talk about because it introduces so many ideas and so many thoughts from so many different directions. And yes, I'm a big supporter of it for a number of reasons. One of them is that it's part of a much bigger picture. And sometimes in archaeology we do forget the big picture. It's part of the big picture which started back in 1983 when English Heritage declared, newly formed at that time, that they were going to, inverted commas, sort out Stonehenge. Sort out the visitor experience of Stonehenge. And I don't think there was anybody in the kingdom who felt it wasn't time to sort out Stonehenge. Mm-hmm. What they came up with after a lot of work, a lot of thinking, a lot of consultation, was essentially a three-pronged approach. The first prong was to move the visitor centre from where it was, as you remember, right beside Stonehenge, literally in the shadow of Stonehenge. It was pretty awful. It's hard to think your way back there now, but it was pretty awful. To move that somewhere at least a couple of miles away, so that it would be out of the way, the parking would be out of the way, and people would walk across or be taken across to Stonehenge. So moving the centre and creating a proper visitor facility for Stonehenge, but not in its shadow, a good distance away. That was the first prong. The second prong was to remove the A304, which, again, you don't have to cast your mind back too far to remember that there was a road running right, literally through Stonehenge. It went within a few yards of the Heelstone. And buses and lorries and cars used to trundle on that road far too fast sometimes, I'm afraid. There were accidents, sadly to say. It was not a pleasant experience. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, there'd be very few people who would demur from the fact that it would be a good idea to get rid of that road. And that's been done as well. So the visitor centre has been moved to a great location off to the west. The A344 has been closed past Stonehenge. It's all been returfed. And you go there now and it's beautiful. The landscape there is beautiful. You can hear the birds singing. You can see the animals going about their business in the landscape. And you can really enjoy Stonehenge. There's still a couple of fences there, some of which are there for technical and legal reasons. Perhaps in due course those will come down as well. But we're moving very much in the right direction to open up the Stonehenge landscape. So the third part of the plan was to sort out the A303. And that, of course, had to be done in conjunction with what was then the Department of Transport, Highways England as it is now. That was a much bigger job, of course, a much bigger project, and also involved huge amount of effort. But right from the word go, sorting out 303 and getting it out of the way or underground was very much part of the Stonehenge agenda. So this is the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. The first two have been done. The third one is on the cards and hopefully will start before very long now. So the big picture, I think, is quite important. The result of those three initiatives was to give a good visitor experience into a landscape which Stonehenge was the centrepiece of a very nice prehistoric landscape that people could explore and walk around in and come at Stonehenge from all different directions and really, well, you can't turn the clock back to the Neolithic, but you can provide, if you like, the thinking space for people to think their way back to the Neolithic. And that really involved getting rid of the traffic and getting rid of the visitor centre and all the rest of it. So the first thing is I see it in very much those terms. I see it as a conservation project, and building a tunnel is not about building a road in the Stonehenge landscape. It's about taking a road out of the Stonehenge landscape. At the end of the project, when it's all done and dusted and finished, there will be no road to the south of Stonehenge. It's going to be underground by a good few metres, and we won't see any significant trace of it on the surface. There'll be a footpath on the top, and the landscape will be opened up. The National Trust own the land to the south of the 303 as well as the land to the north, and of course their policy is for free roaming, and people will be able to go and walk in those landscapes in an unhindered way. So all of that's good news. I see it as a conservation project rather than a development project, and the fact that the Highways England and their predecessor organisations have been so committed to getting a good solution to Stonehenge question, if you like, I think is really encouraging. And we've got a good solution now. It's the best solution that we're ever going to get. And if we don't go with this solution, then the likelihood is that there will be a dual carriageway on the surface right south of Stonehenge, and that nobody wants. Nobody wants that. So this is what we're looking at. We've then got another interesting angle, and that is, of course, that most archaeological discoveries are made through development, through the process of development, through the process of change. And if you want to be really philosophical about it, one's got to realise that archaeologists study change. We study the products of people changing their landscape right from the year dot down to now. And if they didn't change their landscapes, we'd have nothing to study. So in one sense, we've got to let the process of landscape change and development go on, just so that my successors and your successors in years to come will have something to study. I mean, that's a very philosophical position, I know, but nonetheless there's something to be said for that. So a lot of archaeology, most archaeology in fact, comes through development. That's how we know about the archaeology that we've got. And so in one way, the proposals which are being made give us a fantastic opportunity to have a look at some bits of landscape that we wouldn't otherwise have a look at. There's almost nothing to do inside the World Heritage Site. A few trenches, but proportionally speaking, not a lot is going to happen there. And if the archaeologists who have been planning this for years now have done their job even half well, there's not going to be much to find, because the location of the portals and the location of the introductory roads coming in and so on, the spur roads and things, they're all in places which, as far as we can see, will have very minimal, if any, archaeological impact. But we also have to realise the tunnel is only part of a bigger scheme. It extends westwards by quite a long way. It goes right round the north side of the village of Winterbourne Stoke, and it takes us into the Till Valley and then up onto the higher ground beyond the Till Valley to the west. Now that's an area where almost no archaeology has been done in the last 50 or 100 years. We've got lots of archaeology done around Amesbury, the relocation of the military bases on the edge of Salisbury Plain, of course. Rebasing programme has led to discoveries of causeway enclosures and new henges and all sorts of things around on the north and the east side. We've got almost nothing on the west side and the southwest side. So this road is going to give us a real opportunity to have a look at a good slice through the landscape to the west of the World Heritage Site. It's outside the World Heritage Site, but for my money, that's where the really interesting discoveries are going to be. It's an area we don't know much about. It would be lovely to think that there's some things to find out about the River Till. We've got lots of stuff on the River Avon, the work that Mike Parker Pearson and others have done on the Avon, and the work David Jakes has done on the Mesolithic beside the Avon there. We've got nothing to say, is that the same on the River Till, or is it different? And if it is different, why is it different? Again, we've got to go back and listen to the archaeological evidence a bit, and for that we need some holes to tell us what's going on.
Why do you think has been so much emphasis about loss of archaeology rather than which is to be gained? Can you play devil's advocate for a bit around that?
It's very hard to see. Well, one can take the very hardcore conservation notion that nobody does anything anywhere, anytime, and I suppose that's the kind of that's the most extremist position you can have on conservation, that nothing happens ever. And
some people hold
that. Of that really. Well, a few people do hold to that view. Of course, the world's never going to change if we subscribe to that position. And even coming back a little bit from it still leaves us wanting to do very little and touch very little and not do very much. And I suppose it's fair to say this was an idea which really sprang up in the 1960s and 70s, perhaps at a time when people were very fearful of the archaeological resource not being particularly rich or plentiful. We now know from development archaeology over the last 30-odd years that actually archaeology is incredibly plentiful, it's incredibly rich, and we probably even haven't even found the best stuff yet. We've got some cracking stuff. So we've got to look at it the other way. Development is what drives archaeology. And, the many of the best discoveries. There's a few which sit outside in the sort of private research domain, but for the large part, if you look at all the work that's been done in our towns and cities on medieval archaeology and post-medieval archaeology, this is because of development. If you look at all the work that was done on Darrington Walls in the 1960s and 70s, it was because roads were built there. The only reason we know about Darrington Walls is because there were roads built there in the late 1960s. And the same applies to a lot of parts of the Stonehenge landscape. It's because there has been development that we can say anything about it at all.
Amesbury Archer, no Boscombe Bowman.
Amesbury Archer is another classic case, Mark. I mean, that was found in a school development on the outskirts of Amesbury, and along with a lot of other stuff too. I mean, if you look through the reports on those excavations, there's a huge amount, not just for prehistory, but Saxon and Roman too. So all of that is, and the richness of Stonehenge, if you like, has come because of development. So here's a great opportunity. And the funding is in place, the skills are all in place, the contractors have been appointed and so on. We're ready to roll on doing a really good piece of archaeology. Not much is going to happen inside the World Heritage Site. A good amount of archaeology will be done to the west, and that's personally where I'm looking to see some new information, some new insights, and to balance up the Stonehenge landscape picture a bit. We've got so much from the east side, now we need a bit from the west, and I don't think we're going to get that sort of research funding to go dig in the west. So somebody's going to be doing this for us and taking a nice.
Here's a kind of point to make. I mean, there must have been just huge hurdles that even someone such as you had to go through in order to dig a hole a few meters wide, albeit, within the Sarson's stones, as it were. But even you had to go through a lot of red tape to be given permission. It's not something you just did because,
No. And the same applies to all protected monuments.
Well, that's the point, that the archaeology doesn't necessarily get done unless somebody's, got a good reason to put a spade in the ground. Yeah.
Yes. But we're not going to learn anything new unless we put a spade in the ground. There comes a time when you can keep reworking information from old excavations and reinterpretations possible, and we keep samples so that new techniques can be applied to them and all these kind of things. That's fine, but there comes a point where you've actually got to go and do something new. You've got to make some new incisions. And, David Jakes' work, for example, on the Mesolithic stuff there was an opportunity to have a look at something which has become really, really interesting and important as a result of digging in the ground. And if we stop anybody digging, we're going to stop archaeology happening.